Tonight, let the world fall away. Set down the weight of your day and step quietly into a city of domes and mosaics, a city where incense clings to marble, where sandals echo through gilded corridors, and where whispers hold more power than shouts. This is Constantinople, not just a city, but a world of thresholds, between East and West, between empire and faith, between silence and the echo of ambition. In the heart of this strange world walked men who were not quite men, at least not as the world judged them. Eunuchs, cut from inheritance, carved from legacy, and yet somehow closer to power than almost anyone else. Tonight's journey begins with them. We'll follow the quiet footsteps of a palace servant who could depose emperors. We'll feel the cool hush of Hagia Sophia and search its stones for secrets. And as always, we'll rise for a time into the honeyed light of the elite, where silk rustles and politics is whispered over bowls of spiced wine. But first, let us descend. To understand their rise, we must first sit beside them, in silence, in shame, and in strange proximity to the throne. Close your eyes, and imagine yourself in the heart of Byzantium. Imagine waking in a stone chamber just before dawn. The sky beyond the city walls still a deep bruised blue. And in the silence before the city stirs, no merchants, no minarets, no bells. You are already awake. Not because you want to be, but because today you are to be reshaped. You are a boy, perhaps from Cappadocia, or Armenia, or taken in war from the outer provinces. Sold maybe, given perhaps in tribute, your village long behind you, your name soon unspoken. You have no mother near you now, no father's voice, only the hush of stone, the sandals of a priest, the whisper of a blade cooling in oil. The Byzantine Empire, ever pragmatic, did not create eunuchs out of cruelty. It created them out of necessity. A eunuch could hold power without ever birthing a dynasty. He could serve an empress without threat of scandal. He could rise, but only so far as he remembered who allowed the rising. And so the cutting was done, in hidden places, by practiced hands, and not always cleanly. Some died from it. Some lived, but not whole. Some could no longer walk straight. Others sang with strangely beautiful voices. All were changed, and then they were brought inside. The great palace of Constantinople did not open its doors to just anyone. Behind the bronze gates and layers of marble stood an empire within an empire. Hundreds of rooms, mosaic corridors, ceremonial thrones, golden fountains, and gardens that never saw the dust of the street. Here, eunuchs became something different. They were dressed in long trailing robes, their heads shaved, their gestures trained to be subtle, and their eyes always watching. Some were given charge of the imperial wardrobe, others of letters, still others of the empress's chambers. and a rare few were taught to advise the emperor himself. But none of this erased what had been taken. They were never truly of the aristocracy. No matter how high they rose, they had no family to inherit their name, no sons, no marriage, no lineage. They were ghosts in velvet, respected, necessary, but never quite whole in the eyes of others. Still, there were comforts. They slept in tiled chambers, not straw. They wore silk, not sackcloth. Their fingers held scrolls, not scythes. Some owned land. Others dictated policy. And if they bowed low in public, they often stood tall in private councils. And yet, the loneliness remained. Whispers followed them. Stories. The fear that something unnatural lingered behind their smooth faces. The fear that they knew too much, had seen too much, were too close to the seat of power. For even emperors could be watched, and even emperors could be betrayed. In the cold mornings before court, a eunuch might light incense at a small private altar, alone, no family name to carry prayers forward, only the steady flame, and the knowledge that his hands, bloodless, childless, held keys that others could only dream of. He might hear the chanting rise from Hagia Sophia and pause to listen, but not pray, not openly. Some joined the church. Some became abbots. Others disappeared into bureaucratic labyrinths. Most simply remained, neither servant nor master, trusted, and never entirely loved. The rhythm of their lives was silent, ceremonial, intricate. They bowed in procession, recited memorized titles, kissed rings, interpreted dreams. They sent letters to generals, received envoys from distant deserts, whispered secrets into the right ears. But at night, beneath the carved ceilings and candlelight, they were alone. Their power was vast, but always borrowed, and always at risk. For when an emperor fell, so did his eunuchs. When a dynasty changed, the quiet men in purple robes were the first to be questioned, and often the first to disappear. And yet, it was often eunuchs who endured. While generals died on the frontier, and nobles fell to faction, the eunuch remained, a little older, a little sadder, but still at court, still serving, still watching, and always, always remembered. For in the empire of Byzantium, it was not always the sword that shaped history. Sometimes it was silence. Sometimes it was the man who could never be father, who guided the fate of fathers, sons, and emperors. And so the chamber grows quiet again. The flame burns lower, and we prepare to follow one such man. From silence to shadow, from chamber door to imperial power. His name was Basil, and his story is next. Now imagine a long corridor lined with polished porphyry. The scent of incense clings faintly to the folds of heavy curtains. In the hush of morning, before bells ring and scrolls are unfurled, a man walks with soft steps and sharper thoughts. He is neither prince nor priest. He holds no noble title. And yet, the guards bow as he passes. The scribes rise. And even the emperor waits for his voice. This is Basil, Basil the Chamberlain, a man without bloodline, without heir, and yet for a time he held more power than anyone in Byzantium. Let us walk with him quietly now down that polished corridor and into the strange world he made his own. We know little of his youth. Born in the 10th century, perhaps in humble obscurity, Basil was castrated before adolescence. Not uncommon. A child taken for service. A future decided not by choice, but by the wishes of those above. He entered the palace not with fanfare, but with silence. Yet in the world behind the palace walls, where rank was mutable and influence slipped through cracks like candle smoke, he rose. Through obedience first, then cleverness, then manipulation. He did not fight battles. He did not write poetry. He moved people, shifted appointments, delayed messengers, whispered in chambers that echoed with history. He became parakoimamenos, literally, the one who sleeps beside the emperor. Not a lover, not a guard, but the trusted hand, the voice in the dark, the one who knew the emperor's routines, moods, and fears. From there, he shaped a realm. He served under Emperor Constantine VII, and then Romanos II, and then the young Basil II. At each step, Basil the Chamberlain grew more powerful, not by seizing thrones, but by becoming indispensable to those who sat upon them. He controlled the flow of information. Who saw the emperor? What was heard? What was said? He arranged marriages, approved titles, negotiated foreign policy behind silk screens. And when Emperor Romanos II died suddenly in 963, some say poisoned, others whisper merely unlucky, it was Basil who stood between chaos and control. He did not claim the throne, but he chose who would sit upon it. During the regency for the child Emperor Basil II, the Chamberlain's authority became almost absolute. He dismissed generals, appointed allies, built alliances with the powerful Phocas and Scleros families, Byzantium's military aristocracy. Yet, as with all things in the palace, power was never still. Enemies stirred. Some whispered that Basil was too ambitious, that he stifled the young emperor, that he schemed to remain ruler in all but name. Others remembered that he had no family, that he could not found a dynasty, and so they tolerated him, but none truly loved him, and eventually one did not forgive him. That man was Basil II. the emperor whose name would echo through history, Basil the Bulgar Slayer. But long before the battlefield, he had been a boy watched, shadowed, guided, controlled by the eunuch at his side. And when Basil too came of age, he remembered. He remembered the restrictions, the decisions made without him, the careful limits placed on his voice, his sword, his will. And so he waited, patient, polite, observing the man who had once ruled for him, now ruling beside him, until the moment came. One morning in 985, Basil the Chamberlain was arrested. No trial, no great outcry, just the soft closing of doors. He was accused of treason, of conspiracy, of overreach. Perhaps he was guilty, perhaps not. In Byzantium, guilt and timing were often intertwined. What we do know is this: he was stripped of his titles, removed from court, sent to exile, and there he faded, not into disgrace precisely, but into quiet, the kind of silence reserved for those too powerful to punish loudly, but too dangerous to forget. And so the empire turned, as it always did. New faces rose, new names echoed in the halls. Basil too, now free, would become a warrior king. He would reshape the empire's borders and legacy. But even in his glory, he never quite escaped the shadow of the chamberlain. For it was Basil the eunuch who had raised him, had taught him patience, taught him control, taught him how power moves quietly. In that sense, the chamberlain never truly fell. He lived on in the emperor's mind, in the machinery of the court he had shaped, in the caution of those who followed, and in the legends whispered by scribes and servants of the eunuch who once ruled without a crown. Now, the candles burn low again, and we step out of the palace. The air outside is cool. Our next path leads not through marble halls, but beneath them, into the great church of Constantinople, where light dances on gold, and stone remembers things no voice dares speak. Let us go to Hagia Sophia. Step now into the hush of another world, the great church, the holy wisdom. Hagia Sophia. Its name means divine knowledge, not just of books and men, but something older and quieter, something that lives in stone and shadow, in echoes, in symbols, in silence. Imagine yourself standing beneath its great dome. The light is dim, filtered through high windows that seem more sky than glass. Incense clings to the air, though no censer swings. And everywhere, mosaics, gold and blue and ochre, figures that watch you, not quite directly, as though remembering something you've forgotten. But Hagia Sophia is more than beauty. It is memory and mystery. Let us linger here a while and listen. The church was built and rebuilt, its present form rising under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century. He is said to have looked upon its completion and whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." And indeed, it was the largest church in the world for nearly 1,000 years. Its dome, an architectural marvel, seemed to float unsupported, held aloft by divine grace and human precision. But look closer, and stranger stories emerge. In the apse behind the altar, some say a soft echo returns not from the walls, but from something within them. The acoustics of Hagia Sophia are uncanny. Modern researchers have found that sounds linger longer than they should. Chants stretch into unnatural reverberation. One whisper becomes many. One voice becomes a choir. Was it planned or inherited? Some say the design channels the divine. Others suspect ancient knowledge, lost engineering, now entombed in brick and marble. And then there are the inscriptions. Beneath layers of plaster, added during later centuries, lie ancient graffiti, some carved by pilgrims, some by guards. One famously in Viking runes. Halfdan was here, a Norseman, in a Christian basilica, leaving his name beside the altar. How did he get here? We know that the Varangian Guard, elite soldiers from the north, served Byzantine emperors. Men of strength and silence, men who guarded and watched, just like eunuchs. Perhaps Halfdan was one of them. Perhaps he stood where we now stand, sword at his side, awed by the dome above, and unable to resist scratching his name into eternity. Other markings hint at older mysteries. Symbols embedded in floor stones. Crosses with uneven arms. Circles overlapping in curious patterns. Hidden monograms. Some believe they mark sacred geometry, guides for prayer, or alignment with the stars. Others suggest a different function. Secret instructions, messages for those who knew how to read them. Directions for rituals. Traces of heresies long erased. But no one truly knows. And Hagia Sophia does not explain herself. In one column near the south gallery, there is a hole. Pilgrims touch it, slide their thumb inside, turn it clockwise. They call it the weeping column. Some say it heals illness. Others say it whispers the future. The stone is damp, always. Is it water from the dome above? Condensation, or tears? You decide. The church is full of such paradoxes, things that make sense, and yet don't. And then there are the mosaics. One, hidden for centuries, shows the Virgin Mary between two emperors, Constantine and Justinian, offering her the city and the church. Their faces are serene, but the message is clear. This is not just a church. It is the center of empire, the seat of wisdom, the anchor of fate. Other mosaics shimmer with gold backgrounds and saintly faces, but none of them smile. They observe. Imagine standing alone beneath the dome as twilight falls. The city outside begins to quiet. The muezzin's call, added centuries later, mingles with the fading memory of ancient hymns. And inside, Hagia Sophia breathes. Not literally, but there is a rhythm, a silence that is not empty, a presence that is not visible. You are not alone, not entirely. The footsteps of thousands have worn these stones smooth. Pilgrims, emperors, scribes, eunuchs, children, some praying, some hiding, some just wondering. Perhaps that is what Hagia Sophia holds most of all. Wonder, not answers, not doctrine, but layered wonder. Gold that hides older paint, script beneath plaster, geometry beneath ceremony. It is said that during the Fourth Crusade, when the church was sacked, a light was seen above the dome, and that when the looters approached, it vanished. Others say a dove once circled the apse for hours, refusing to land, as though looking for something it had lost. Stories, perhaps, but in Byzantium, stories were never just stories. They were currency. They were caution. They were truth shaped like metaphor. And so we step back, slowly out of the church. The air is cool again. And now we rise once more. From mystery to luxury. From the hidden to the gilded. The eunuch may have whispered in the shadows, but the nobility dined beneath chandeliers. Let us go to the banquets, where honey dripped and politics flowed like wine. Now rise gently from the candlelit hush of stone halls and sacred echoes into the golden glow of courtly life. Imagine warm lamplight flickering across polished silver, silks rustling as courtiers adjust their robes, the air laced with the sweetness of honey cakes, and the sharper scent of clove, cinnamon, and wine warmed just enough to steam. This is Constantinople, after prayers have ended and before ambitions have cooled. The hour of the banquet, where power dines dressed as grace, and where every bite carries meaning. To dine at the imperial court was not simply to eat. It was to perform, to be seen, to be ranked, to be measured by where you sat, what you wore, and how you listened. The emperor sat beneath a golden canopy, his garments dyed in precious purple, imperial, and reserved for no one else. Around him, arranged in perfect hierarchy, were senators, generals, scholars, and envoys from distant lands. A eunuch might stand just behind the throne, silent, not eating, but watching. He knew who glanced too often, who reached too eagerly, who whispered when they should not. In Byzantium, the meal was always more than it seemed. Plates arrived in procession, not all at once, but with rhythm. First, fruit preserved in rosewater, then roasted quail with citrus glaze, fish, delicately seasoned, pomegranates, halved and glittering, goat cheese with honey and black pepper, and finally, pastries shaped like birds, filled with nuts and fig paste. Wine flowed freely, but not without intent. 1 cup was courtesy, 2 indulgence, 3 vulnerability. Few reached for a 4th unless invited, and always the eyes watched. Conversations at court banquets rarely concerned food. Instead, they turned to theology, law, and foreign rumor. Which patriarch had spoken against which bishop? Which general had delayed his campaign? What omen had been seen over the sea? And whether the emperor favored peace or was sharpening his sword. Even dessert could carry subtext. A honey cake gifted by a visiting Persian might be cut in view of all, proving goodwill, or refused, if caution whispered louder than appetite. The room itself shimmered, not with light, but with expectation. Walls inlaid with gold-leafed mosaics reflected not just candlelight, but imperial vision. A fresco of Christ Pantocrator watched from above, reminding all that the divine I never blinked. Musicians played soft melodies from lyres and reed pipes. The sound was gentle, repetitive, almost hypnotic, just enough to blur the edges of speech, just enough to let secrets be spoken under the noise, but never truly hidden. Some guests wore simple robes, scholars, monks, ascetics brought in to lend gravity. Others glittered in brocade and sapphires, their nails manicured, their beards oiled, their speech measured even when laughing. Peacocks might strut in the courtyard beyond. A mechanical lion, created by artisans in the imperial workshops, could rise beside the emperor's seat, its jaws opening, not in threat, but display. Such wonders were common, to remind the guests. This was not a dinner. This was Byzantium. And yet, for all its splendor, court life was fragile. A noble too loud might find himself reassigned, quietly. A general too celebrated might dine at a colder table the next night. Gifts were given, but never freely. Loyalty was bought, but never permanent. Only the emperor endured, and even he, only until the next whisper. Eunuchs, though silent, often saw what others missed. A flicker of hesitation, a trace of fear in a voice. a hand gripping a goblet just a little too tightly. They reported not what was said, but what was meant, and beneath it all lay hunger, not just for food, but for favor, position, power. Even in luxury, Byzantium remained a city of uncertainty, where gold could hide betrayal, and where the flicker of a candle might mean a secret burned, or a future dimmed. Still, imagine the peace of a single moment. You, seated near the marble colonnade, a goblet warm in your hand, the aroma of cinnamon drifting past, the distant echo of footsteps in the hall, and a gentle hush as dessert is served. Outside, the Bosphorus glimmers in moonlight. Ships sway quietly in the harbor. And for now, the empire holds. Tomorrow there may be rumors, or storms, or revolts in the provinces. But tonight, the honey is sweet, the dome holds strong, and Byzantium glows. And so we take one last look at the glint of gold on a wine jug, at the silent nod of a eunuch in shadow, at the slow extinguishing of lamps. The feast ends, but its memory lingers, in candle wax, in silk, in story. We are ready now to close our eyes and remember. And now the music has faded. The chambers are dark. The scent of cloves, incense, and stone lingers faintly, and then dissolves. Tonight we walk through the quiet corridors of Byzantium, not the empire of battlefields and banners, but of shadows and silk. We sat beside a child chosen for silence, watched him grow, not into bitterness, but into influence. We traced his path through golden halls and careful conversations. And when his name faded, we turned not away, but deeper, into the domes, the echoes, the cold elegance of Hagia Sophia. And at last, we tasted the empire's richest wine, only to find that, beneath the sweetness, was solitude. The Byzantine eunuch, you see, was never just a victim, nor only a villain. He was a hinge upon which history turned, a presence designed to be invisible, and yet unforgettable, without dynasty, without voice, but never without consequence. He reminds us that power often walks in silence, that proximity does not mean belonging, and that sometimes the sharpest blade is the one hidden beneath velvet. But we leave Byzantium not with judgment, only with a kind of reverence for the complexities of the human heart, for the cost of loyalty, for the strange paths history allows, and for the ways memory can echo, even when the voice that made it is long gone. Outside, the world is quiet now. No domes above you, no empire at your feet, only breath, steady, still, only the weight of blankets. the hush of night. You are not in Constantinople anymore, but perhaps a part of it remains with you, not in dreams of emperors or silken courts, but in the simple truth that history, even when whispered, endures. Sleep well, and let the echoes rest.